Discuss this now with Barbara Slavin, who joins me from Washington, D.C. She's a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Center. Thank you so much for being with us here on Tier 2 World. First off, I'd like to get your reaction on the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei.
Sure. By the way, it's Barbara Slavin, not Slavin. I'm not surprised that Mojtaba was chosen. I think this is a way of showing the United States and Donald Trump in particular that it can't dictate who will be the leader of Iran. President Trump specifically said that he didn't want Mojtaba Khamenei and that he, Donald Trump, would choose the next leader of Iran. So this is as Khamenei's father used to say, a punch in the face to the United States by choosing Mojtaba. Also, in wartime, you want someone who is fully familiar with the system, someone who has probably been running much of it at his father's side for many years. Remember, his father was 86. Mojtaba is someone who knows both the military side and also the economic side of the system, and he's extremely close to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is defending Iran.
Do you expect him to continue to implement his father's policies, or could he change the long, hardline stance that we've seen towards the United States and somewhat steer the trajectory of this conflict towards peace? Because we know very little on what his foreign policy would potentially look like.
Well, first we have to wait and see if he survives. Trump and the Israelis have essentially put a target on his back. So will he appear in public? I mean, he's going to have to be extremely careful in order to survive in this position. But if he does survive, he will make decisions not just by himself, but in conjunction with other senior figures in the regime, including officers of the IRGC, individuals like Ali Khamenei, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, essentially their national security advisor, the head of the parliament, Speaker of the Parliament, Kalibaf, and others within the system will be making the decisions. And a lot will depend, obviously, on U.S. policy. Will the United States at some point decide that the costs of this war are too high? We have oil over $100 a barrel. The stock market is sinking. There are a lot of screams from Republicans who voted for Donald Trump because he promised no more wars in the Middle East and who now feel betrayed. So the question is who will blink first? And I would say that probably Donald Trump will.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the surge in oil prices. It has passed $105 per barrel after Mojtaba Khamenei's appointment. How do you think this is going to strain global energy markets?
Look, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively blocked. There's no liquefied natural gas coming out. The Houthis may decide to block the Red Sea again. This is an economic crisis that is entirely caused by the U.S. and Israeli decision to go to war on Iran.
You mentioned the Strait of Hormuz. It's essentially come to a standstill. Do you expect it to turn into a front line of this war as we hear from world leaders, particularly those in Europe, call on business to continue as usual along the strait?
The problem is that shipping companies will not, and oil companies will not agree to take the risk. You know, whatever Donald Trump says, it's a question of skyrocketing insurance premiums. It's very dangerous, and the U.S. is not going to be escorting oil tankers down the Persian Gulf like it did in the 1990s. Although the world, fortunately, is not as dependent on oil, and particularly not as dependent on oil from the Persian Gulf as it used to be, it is still 20% of world supply. And so the impact on prices and so on will be extreme.
Okay, Barbara Slavin, thank you so much for being with us here on Tier 2 World and sharing that insight with us.